Finance Property Committee meeting to order at 5 PM Tuesday, November 10th, third floor conference room at City Hall. Mr. Whirl and Mr. Dolan are present. Mr. Heft is excused. Can we go around the room real quick for the folks at home?
Chad World, District 1.
Jeff Kuhn, Waterworks and Lighting Commission.
Dale Schuneman, Waterworks and Lighting.
Jen Brown, Water and Light.
Tom Rayon, 4th District.
Scott Kellogg, 3rd District.
Cindy Schlichting, Counting.
Joe Terry, Public Works Director.
Todd Ferky, City Alderman.
Jim Borski, Street Department.
Terry Dolan, District 8. First item is done. Second item, review and approval of the 2016 Waterworks Lighting Commission budget.
Pretty straightforward budget this year, nothing extraordinary as far as expenses. No planned rate increases for next year on either water or electric. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to hit some of the high points and then let you guys ask any questions that you might have.
Sure, thanks. As you might recall from past years, our accounting is defined by the Public Service Commission, and they adopted their accounting system from FERC's Uniform System of Accounts. So it looks a little different than you may be used to seeing, but they define the categories, the expense categories, the revenue categories, and what's capital and operational. So the budget you're seeing is pretty much the same setup that every utility in the country kind of follows that way. As Jen mentioned, we have no rate increases proposed in 2015 for either the electric utility or the water utility. There's no new positions planned to be added in 2016. When we do our revenue estimates, we're pretty conservative on our revenue estimates. On the electric side, we're estimating 0.2% of reduction in usage from 2015. And that comes from our power supplier, Great Lakes Utilities estimate. On the water side, we're estimating flat water usage. Got a little bump up in revenue just because we did a simplified rate case in June of 2015. So in 2016, we'll have that 12-month increase there. Just remembering too, as we go through here, our utility revenue isn't guaranteed. If we get a wet or cold summer, we're not going to get the water revenue or the electric revenue that we're budgeting, but again, being conservative as we are, we're pretty comfortable with our numbers. Just wanted to walk through a couple pages with everybody. On page 6 is the calculation for our budgeted rate of return for the electric utility. I think all of you know the Public Service Commission sets our rates, and when they set our rates, they set them to cover our operating expenses and then provide a reasonable rate of return to cover any non-operating expenses, plus provide for any future capital needs as they arise. So walking through the calculation, we get down to about the middle of the page, which is our average rate base in the electric utility, which we estimate will be about $28.2 million. And we look at the operating income, which is just shy of $1.3 million. So we end up with a rate of return on our assets of about 4.6%. We're authorized for 5.75% when we did our last rate case. Still pretty comfortable, probably the best position the electric utility has been in a couple of years. So should be pretty comfortable for a couple of years. Pages 7, 8, and 9 just go into the detail of the expenses that make that up. The other page I just wanted to walk through was the budgeted rate of return for water. Again, looking at the same calculations, average rate base of just shy of $24 million, looking at operating income of about $917,000, which estimates our rate of return at about 3.8%. Decent. I mean, we're authorized at 6%, so we're getting down in that area. We still have no planned rate increases for 2016 and might have to look, towards the end of 2017 or 2018. We don't want to get into the spot where we've got huge water rate increases of 20% or more, so we're going to definitely keep an eye on that as we go forward and try to keep those increases minimal to the ratepayers. And then following pages 12, 13, and 14 are the revenue and expenses that get us to that operating revenue. The other page I just wanted to highlight for you guys, page 16, our capital additions history. You can see in 2016 we have $2.958 million budgeted total for capital. which is 1.75 in the electric utility, 768,000 on the water utility, and then 440,000 mixed between the common system and information systems. And that, all those projects are detailed between pages 17 and 26 as far as what makes up those amounts and a description of each project. Those are kind of the highlights. Again, like Jem mentioned, there's really nothing new, no new initiatives, no new positions, no rate increases, so it's a pretty straightforward budget this year from Water and Light.
Okay, open it up for questions. Nobody? Mr. Foote?
On page 16, item number 4, it says capital additions include a new billing and accounting software,
Mm-hmm.
$320,000
Mm-hmm.
for software.
Yeah, if you go back and look, that was what happened in 2013.
Uh-huh.
So that was the capitalized cost of that project. That was with our consultants to get that accounting and billing system up and running. That, I believe, was about a 18-month project total to get it up and running. Right around that, so it was.
The utility needed to upgrade its software both from a financial reporting perspective and a customer billing perspective. So at the time, we issued an RFP and interviewed all the basically utility vendors throughout the country, and this one ended up, NISC was the name of the company we ended up choosing. It's actually a monthly cost that we pay each month, but we capitalized the, 5 or 10 year value of that.
And it was the
upfront.
implementation cost of
Right.
that, right?
So you depreciated that over 5 years?
Correct,
is that
and
what you're
it's
saying?
allowed us to do a lot of the things we're doing with the customers as far as presentment on the internet of all the customers' bills, allowing them to pay online, track their consumption history, and all those things as well. It also allowed us to do mobile workforce. We basically send all our service orders directly from the office to the trucks via computer or laptop. It's allowed us to do our GIS and engineering and staking. I mean, it's just brought the efficiency of the utility up a lot from where it was before we did the project.
Okay. So more than just the billing part, but the
Correct.
actual,
Correct, a lot of operational
Right.
benefits to it and financial reporting.
thank you.
Good thing the city budget's next on the agenda, huh? To make it a little easier.
Good question. The 20, or the 8th Street lighting, I know that's something that has been talked about and people have referenced in your planning. Is that the entirety of the 8th Street lighting?
No,
Or is that a
that's-
phase of the system?
That's,
I see that in multiple years.
the 5 to 10 year plan is to budget 100 to 200,000 each year and tackle a few blocks.
Yeah, okay.
Problem with 8th Street lighting is, you know, a lot of the wires run overhead. All of our wire was direct buried before we started putting stuff in conduit, so it's failing. So when we, and as you know, 8th Street's a tight street to do underground work on. But the plan is to put $100,000 to $200,000 each year in and handle a piece of it. By the end of this year, we'll have hung LED lights from Walmart back up north for a couple blocks. That's yet to be completed by the end of this year, and then I think the plan is to to start around grand and then work our way down every year and try to get a block or two done. And switch them to LEDs. We have a lot of, on a streetlight basis, we plan to go all to LEDs. We have several high-pressure sodiums that we still have in stock. We plan to put those out in the field. And when they're all gone, then the plan is just to, even for Cobra heads, and when we replace any streetlight, it'll be putting in an LED.
The streetlights on West Grand, in my district, they're looking pretty bad, rusty on the bottom. When's the plan in the future to touch them up from when they first redid the street?
Boy, I thought, didn't we?
Just did those a couple years
I
ago.
thought we just repainted all those.
You know, if you look
Couple
down
years ago,
farther by
Chad.
County Plus, Jeep and Eagle, they're pretty rusted 4 feet up,
Okay.
off the sidewalk.
I'll check them out and see, but if they're, I mean, look at, like this year, I know we concentrated and painted all the poles downtown to try to kind of match the new decorative LEDs we're putting up. And I know we did a good part of Grand a couple years ago, but I'll check on it and see what we can do. It's really not that expensive to hire somebody to come in and strip the paint, prime it and repaint it, so we can look at that. That goes into operation and maintenance instead of capital, though, so.
This was all passed by the commission.
Our commission, yes, passed it last week. Went to them.
Usually our longest meeting of the year, we typically come in about 9 in the morning and wrap up a little after lunch, so usually go through it pretty good.
More for my, because I had a couple meetings with you guys on page 19, that number 5, is that what you were talking about when we were doing the tour, Jim, when we were talking about that loop? Weren't we talking about that when we did the tour? We build the distribution circuits along 16th Street, Loop 1, I thought we, is that what we talked about?
That would be to get some of those commercial customers, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
on their own loop.
Without any interruption then,
Plan.
right?
It's the plan.
Any other questions? You guys got any other questions in the room? All right, I propose a motion to approve the 2016 Waterworks Lighting Commission budget. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3, agenda item 3, request to receive the salvage and demolition of the 2 buildings in the city recently purchased in the downtown area. Who's talking about that one?
Well, okay, I'll just go ahead. Obviously, we purchased the 2 buildings on the Triangle Development, that being the Spath and the USDA, the building, the Zerflu, where USDA was. And basically, those buildings have been shut down, and we're requesting permission from the Finance Committee and the Council to raise those buildings. approximate cost will be about $76,000. That includes a 20% contingency. The work will be done by our city crews, which accounts for about 44,000 of that, and then we have contracted services, land tip, tipping fees and things like that for another 30,000, fencing, things like that.
So the grants never came through?
The grant is for a different building that we haven't acquired yet, for a site assessment, or, this
Has
is.
not been submitted either.
Yeah.
Until we get.
Okay, I just remember you saying that
Yeah.
if we got the grant, then it had to be, our crews couldn't do it ourselves.
Right, yeah, this is for a
Yeah.
different building,
Yeah.
yeah. And also as part of this, requesting, we're gonna be sending out, or we did send out RFPs for salvage. I don't know, Jim, maybe you can touch on that, or?
Yeah, we thought it might be worthwhile to let firms or individuals take a look at those two buildings and see what it'd be worth to be able to go in and strip them of anything valuable. It would reduce the amount of material we'd have to haul to the landfill or sort out ourselves, and, maybe it won't be attractive to anybody, maybe it will, but we're hoping there's some value there, and somebody will come in and take the flooring and the doors and the windows and the wiring and the electrical panels and whatever else and give the city something for it to offset some of our cost. If it doesn't happen, I guess you don't have to accept, if you don't get a number you like, you don't have to accept anybody's proposal, but something we thought we'd try and see if it draws any flies.
How far of a radius do you send, or for notice do you put out to different companies?
I don't really even know how we'll advertise it. I would think in some of the local trade magazines and the newspaper and see what we get.
We're live, or I'd have a comment on that, but. Surprised the phone already didn't take it out, no.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the request to proceed with the salvage and demolition of the two buildings the city recently purchased as presented.
Second that motion. Further discussion, Mayor?
The only comment Tim would probably add if he was here was where the funds are gonna come from.
Yeah.
And maybe did he already say that? What I was saying out there. So I think we're gonna charge it to the building acquisition fund line item, and then because there's a manpower and equipment usage involved, we will just do in the transfer resolution process at the end of the year, account for it there, is what my understanding was. Because we've got some budgeted accounts for the maintenance dollars that the crews would already be charging toward in that time, so it would just be accounted there. The other thing on the perimeter fencing, the fencing was something that kind of fell in as we talked. Some of that area, we kind of wanted to secure it. We don't necessarily need to secure around the buildings necessarily, but I think staff will work through that yet, but that's where the new fence, and I think we haven't really talked about fencing as part of it, but it's not a small expenditure, but, it's gonna be something where we probably want to secure any areas that we don't want public parking in anymore, or any usage around the site, so that was one of the additions, but that's all I wanted to add.
Your snow fence won't work?
No, I don't think snow fence and this size in downtown, it's windier than heck, and it'll be a while. It'll be there a while, so it'd be more headache than it's worth. So we got a quote from American Fencing to put up the construction type chain link fence.
You may have said, but gets approved time frame right away?
We're trying to get it going as soon as possible. I guess we'll give the people a couple of weeks to decide if they want to take a look at the buildings and give us a quote, and then it could be scheduled shortly after that. We do have some lead paint to remove and some asbestos to get out of there yet.
Good.
Hopefully before the end of the year, but that'd be kind of tight probably.
Some bowling balls in the basement?
No. Would be the other building, I think that shoots.
Get that one. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 4, 2016 budget review. Did you do this already? And specifically, we left last week with what we discussed, page, I think, 45 and 46. Which I still have highlighted earmarked, so can we start there?
Where you want.
Well, there was a proposal to go page by page, but I'm assuming after having this for 3 weeks, many of us have done that, and we answered some questions last week, so I just would start there.
What was the question that Mr. Kolth left? We ran out of time. He was talking about the two positions. Do you remember?
It wasn't it was specific to the mayor, and I think Mayor answered it, Mayor Verwick answered it, but, so we have these positions in the budget, and Renaissance can't even fill a lot of these positions, so I think he was wondering why we got it in the budget, basically. That's what I'm wondering anyhow.
Yeah, I probably could.
Because if you're not currently,
I mean, we have-
if you're not currently
don't we?
posting for it, then it shouldn't be in here, right?
We are, which one are you talking about first? The Director of Innovation and Technology? That position is, we are accepting applicants, and Beth, if she was here, could indicate the last time she received applicants. It's been some time, but we still receive, I mean, it's still posted on the city's website, she's still actively sourcing applicants. But that position, as I think I indicated last time, was a position that HR, I feel maybe HR is a little bit of unfinished business to do, or at least conversation about recruitment for that position. If in fact we're gonna keep it at the same level it is. Is there a need? Absolutely. Are there items that are not being completed because that position is unfilled? Yes. But are there things that are critical that we haven't been able to work around? Sure. I mean, there's things between, we heard the question actually about software in the water and light sort of arena. We have a huge need, long-term need, to address our horrible software, outdated software that we have. It's not that it doesn't serve our needs today, it does. It's just we haven't modernized it, right? So I'm signing paper timesheets every 2 weeks. I mean, anecdotally I could share things, but that's neither here nor there. So there are projects that person or that individual would be steering if in fact it was seated, but without it, we've been able to get by and continue to proceed. So specific to that position, I think a referral to HR should occur as to the discussion about filling that position long-term, and maybe strategies to do so, and maybe to evaluate the job description, just have some discussion about it. But there's definitely a need for that position, and others, I can have departments quantify that need as did in the past, but that's, I guess, 2 cents for my position about that particular position.
And then one more question. I remember I asked Tim, if you budgeted the 71 grand last year and you didn't fill the position, now you're budgeting for it again, where did that 71 grand go last year?
In 2015?
Or this year?
For this year,
next year?
our plan is that we're going to be looking at proposals to update our phone system. And the idea there is for these unspent funds, they'll be used to fund a new phone system at City Hall, and I think the library is included in that.
Okay.
And seeing the proposals today, we're gonna need every penny of that 71 grand. Blows my mind, but,
On the
if in
GIS,
fact that's a priority and we continue down that path.
on the GIS specialist, when we were discussing this position in HR, I see you have 49,911 is the starting wage. That originally wasn't the starting wage.
Right.
If I remember correctly, Chris was more qualified, so we made a motion to pay him for what he's worth. Shouldn't we back that, if you don't have anyone hired right now, shouldn't we back that down in case we find somebody at an entry level, and we can always bump, depending upon their qualified level?
Because that amount's in the budget doesn't necessarily mean that's the amount that would be offered to that person.
Okay.
It's a budget number, and that offer would be really dependent on qualifications.
And
So as long
because,
as you're budgeting 49, we could start them out at 32, and now we got it covered.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, that's,
and I'll add one additional comment to that. And because that position is vacant, we haven't landed on the fact of what we're gonna do with that position yet. So yes, the budget is somewhat of a placeholder for that item, as is the Director of IT, I guess you could say. So we're gonna, discuss that further and land on what our proposal will be, and possibly referrals to HR on that as well.
I'm kind of back to my original, I don't know if it was my question originally, but, so we're budgeting for this, I understand budgets, we do them all the time at the mill, but, so, is there a possibility of filling this year?
The GIS specialist?
No, the.
Oh, okay.
Director
The
of
GIS,
Innovation and
that just was vacated not that long ago. I think so. I think if we put together the strategy to fill it and we recruit who we want in that position, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to fill it. I mean, it's in my opinion, it's paid very well, and I don't know why somebody wouldn't want to pursue it.
So to Chad's other point, if not, that money, can we,
Well, I think we need to have a conversation of what is our basic need internally to cover our needs. I mean, that job description was pretty
That's what I mean.
inclusive, so there may be a changing of the duties
Okay.
and then be reevaluated at that point.
so that budget number is pretty good no matter what.
It's a
we
low
go.
number. I think of what Beth's evaluation came back. It's been some time, so I can't
Seems
remember
low to me,
specifically. It was very low compared, but we didn't have any really much room in the budget to make that work
Okay.
beyond that at the time. So I think that's where we settled on that price or that dollar number. I mean, I could be. Maybe you got better memory.
I'm not
than
sure
that.
where the exact,
Yeah, and I-
So if
I
you
don't know
have,
about
Evaluated at, yeah.
Yeah.
if you have positions and they're not being filled, so you're gonna take the money and buy phones with them, does it have to be approved by council, or does staff just go ahead because it's budgeted
No, I mean, a new
somewhere?
phone system, that would come through this committee, and
Jim might want a couple leaf suckers earlier in the I mean, when you think about it,
Right.
if you talk to the public, they're complaining about brush pickup and, it's kind of funny, but, I mean, I'm sorry, but I went through Nakusa and Port Edwards yesterday, and I'm just speaking for people that I've talked to, that we gotta bag our leaves and everything, and they just go around, I know it's smaller areas, but they just go around and suck them up, pick them up. That is kind of.
We're working on that.
I know we are, but I mean, if we could do it sooner. But you need to have the technology to run the business to understand that.
Well, we're just finally getting out of a 10-year phone contract? Was it 10 years?
7-year.
7-year phone contract. So our original phone, these are the original phones we've had since we moved into City Hall, if I'm not mistaken.
Was that a
So-
normal?
No, I don't know.
The issue with the phones here is that they're Centric system phones, and that technology's been obsolete for a while. We've been informed for a while now that when critical components die, there are no replacements for them.
So
So,
on the internet and get them on?
yeah, they
You
don't
can do that.
exist. So, it's really imperative that we take
Yeah.
a close look at it.
No, I'm
But yeah.
half joking, but not. So this was a big item last week. I remember we talked about it, this page 45, and I guess if we've got, it's gotta go through us for approval on other items, I guess, it's a $71,000, in my opinion, it's a $130,000 on a $34 million, so we got bigger fish to fry probably.
But I'm glad the questions have come up because if we gotta, what are we gonna do? We're not gonna leave it vacant. If it's gonna
Right.
stay vacant, let's
Well,
find another use of
if
those funds.
Renaissance can't,
And I
not
think
that people won't wanna come
that's
here to
fair.
Renaissance, but Renaissance can't get them.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they're,
They're probably
offering
paying even
change.
more. I mean, they're paying probably more,
You
but
know.
yeah.
'Cause I know this, we struggle to
Find
find electricians, but maybe
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's money. So, okay, so this wage in here is probably on the low end, I would say.
Well, if my memory serves me correct from what Beth said, but it's attractive, and I think if the job description, if that falls within the range of the job description, it falls in the range of the job description. See what we can continue to do to find candidates at that wage, and if we need to adjust it, then the committee can take a look at it. But I think from a budgetary standpoint, I proposed it in the budget to remain because of the outstanding unresolved issues with it. Certainly if there's a better use of the funds, and there's a lot of other uses of funds, if I thought there was a better use, that would have been moved out of there and we would have had a different conversation, I think. But I'm open to thoughts as well.
Yeah, I'm not saying we don't need it, I'm just hoping that you get somebody with that budget.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand we can approve more money if needed, but. Okay. You guys, any other specific questions? That was the last one I had turned over, so.
I'd like to move to page 51. So once again, the executive coordinator is set at 43,058 when the current position pays 41,601, correct?
That's what the,
The wage.
but they get step increases. So they're hired at one step, and after 6 months, they move to another step, and after 1 year, it's a third step, so. So in the first like year and a half, they progress up. And then every year after that, they get another annual step increase through step 6.
On your mayor's councils, there really is only 3 councils: youth council, sustainability, and beautification. Love Your Block at Small Business Summit really shouldn't be in the mayor's councils.
Woody, well, let me take a look at that line item, how it's represented. Look at it. So you're saying they should be where?
Well, I think Love Your Block, Love Your Block, and Small Business Summit should be in community promotion.
Well, that's fine if you want to move it to those line items. I guess it doesn't really matter.
But what I'd like to see is activity base on how you're gonna spend $3,500 on the 3 councils.
Okay.
You have community promotion and everything's listed, and your dues and subscriptions, but nothing under mayor's councils. And training and education.
So I can tell you how we spent the dollars previously. The Small Business Summit, we held breakfast before business at the Mead last year. We didn't do anything yet this year, and I don't believe that there's anything in the works for it. And that was we did actually do some things this year. And that was the Get Your Business Online with Google. We promoted that. And so we hosted a light breakfast that morning, in conjunction with the Chamber and Solaris. Solaris underwrote most of the cost, and we just provided a small match. Now, as far as the other mayor's councils, you want to know how we're going to spend the $3,000 for each of the councils? So the Sustainability Council most recently has been working on their, it's a DNR program. I'm trying to remember what it's called off the top of my head. Essentially, it's a benchmarking of sustainability efforts across communities, and the name escapes me. But as part of that application process, there's an application fee, and there's also material costs. We do a lot of copying for that, which is not covered in our copying budget. There's also opportunities to send folks to the DNR summit that is held for that deal. What's the name of it? Green Tier Legacy Program. That's what it is. It's a Green Tier Legacy Program. And so they evaluate municipalities based on their sustainability efforts. So that's one item that we have identified for that. But if you want, before next week's final budget, I can outline some of those other expenses for you that we anticipate for 2016. I think it's incredibly granular for me to say exactly how they're going to be spent in those councils. We just know that historically those mayor's councils have had expenses, and we figured the $1,000 per council was a fairly accurate depiction of what we could spend. You know, they're not big expenditures, but there are times when there's materials and things that we need to order for the council. So I'd be happy to provide those either for next week or outside of next week's council meeting.
And then one more thing, under community promotion, if you add up everything in the right-hand column, it equals $7,500, just what you budgeted over here. I mean, it equals $7,005, and you budgeted $7,500. So where's the extra $495?
I don't think that list is meant to be all-inclusive. It's just to give you an idea of what that money will be spent on.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, where do we end up with, I guess, on the Meade pool and that? Did we decide, I mean,
On a direction?
yeah,
Well, I think we have about 4 options when we talk, but.
yeah,
But I think we're leaving the money in the budget, right, in case we have to do something. I mean, because we, even if we don't do anything with the pool, we had decided that we were gonna find other alternatives.
and that's what I'm getting at, that we leave that in there, and also,
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, there's that money, but there would all, or, what we're gonna all use it for, but even like, room tax money or
Yeah.
something, that some of that could be put in for, however we go, and maybe that we're gonna, if we look at something
I think we
ourselves,
definitely
for
gotta leave it, yeah.
somebody to, for a design or whatever it is to spend money on, so I mean, okay, just so it's left there. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm hearing that.
Without the intention of operating the pool, at least for now.
Yeah.
I was just gonna comment that I think Mr. Borski's off the hook because we got such a good explanation from Mr. Ballard last week. I was thinking of a question I could ask you, yeah.
Take a shot
No,
at
I
it.
just-
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the
No,
money's
the
left
pool,
there, so
yeah,
at least we can do
absolutely.
something, and we not wait another
Yeah,
year.
Yeah.
Even for design, I mean, I think
Right.
it's
People are
important that
asking
there's
that
money to be there
question,
for,
yeah.
if there's any design of outdoor pools or any of the
Yeah.
components that we.
For whatever.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yep.
If I may, maybe one comment related to design, and that's sort of the Supermass Riverbank stuff. We had indicated that, or, if Adam was here, he'd talk more about it in detail, but, obviously, we've accomplished the preliminary design, and we're waiting for their final report yet, but we may want to, as we move through the end of the year, and then obviously look at transfer resolution, there's obviously some more design work that needs to be done within that. But as part of that, something we're working on internally is to try to put together some financing for phasing of that, so that way we can have some further discussion about what makes sense, where do we start, and some of those things. So we're working on some proposals of that nature for the council consideration outside of the budget process. Because obviously this is our operational budget, but we still have some things outside of it that.
Oh, that'd
that
be
we
good,
continue on.
because definitely want to keep that flowing, and I know we kind of talked about our fireworks budget or whatever, and having a floating dock and then pushing that over, but that's not really a phase of the riverfront project.
Right.
It could be.
Well, and other financing sources too, right? I think if we've committed to the design, preliminary design, we obviously need to commit to some final designs of aspects we want to begin working on, at least in the next year or two. If we don't look at it sooner than later, it's going to be 2017 or 2018 before we construct anything, right? And so we're further behind that process, but, so I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I think we've all had conversations with constituents, and yeah, you don't wanna do that, but are you gonna do this? And, you know,
Yeah.
and I just think of some of the leadership projects, with just doing basic things. And
Yeah. And there's
some
so,
things
so
I think
small
we could
impact,
talk
right?
about
Very
doing.
little impact, but you've got
I
to.
hear a lot about lighting, you
Yeah.
know, the lighting, when are you gonna light up the bridges?
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of discussion on that from at least people in my districts.
It's a great, great question.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I just kind of want to touch base on the wastewater budget. We had a wastewater commission meeting last week, Wednesday, was it? And just kind of, you know, we went over the budget there, but then we also went over the revenue side of the budget, and we're looking at approximate about a $554,000 funding gap between, you know, the budgeted expenditures and what we have for estimating for operating revenues. And discussion about just kind of our, you know, our long-term capital needs. You know, we got big projects coming down with the West Side Lift Station, the pipe going across the river. There's other lift stations. There's the replacement of all our transportation, sanitary transportation system, you know, throughout the city. And we, the commission will be considering, I do believe maybe the December or January commission meeting, looking at a rate increase in the sewer use fee. And approximately at this point about 5%, which is probably on your average household about $1.55 a month would increase on that. But also with the you know, looking at that increase, but also looking at, you know, that we have some other these capital needs. I mean, especially with the West Side Lift Station, you know, what, a $1.5 million project. I mean, we'll probably be looking at a Clean Water Fund loan for that project next year, and then that'll, as part of that process of, you know, we look at our rate structure, making sure that, you know, the state mandates that your operating revenues cover your debt service to a certain extent. So we'll be looking at some of our long-term capital needs and what, you know, the rate structure needs to be over time to address all that. So we're kind of taking a more proactive, incremental approach to funding that stuff as opposed to being reactionary and then having to deal with, you know, a large increase down the road.
As we've looked at that budget and spent some time on it, you know, and the water utility is facing some of the same issues, is that original infrastructure that was paid for by developers, homeowners, businesses to serve their own facilities, as that degrades and needs replacement. Individually, there's not a specific method for that replacement. It's not assessed the second time around. And so, the timing is such that a lot of this infrastructure is nearing the end of its service life. And so starting to replace that and budget for it becomes a challenge. And so our objective as we look at this moving forward is to try to come up with a rate schedule that doesn't just announce a rate increase for next month or next year or whatever, but really projects out so that residents and businesses and industry can predict what their costs will be a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, and make it a little more attractive for businesses that are interested in expanding or moving into the area or making financial decisions so that they can look at that schedule and plan ahead. So that's kind of our focus here. What we anticipate this adjustment that is likely to be proposed wouldn't close that gap, but it would be part of a process to get there.
And just to kind of, now that we had the cost of living adjustment approved by council last month, I'm going back and adjusting all the operating budgets for that 1.5% increase. And because I had previously put that amount, gross amount, into the contingency, so now I'm making those adjustments in the budget. So some of these operating, the wages and benefits will change slightly, but I think it'll be budget neutral because it'll be coming out of contingency and going back into the operating budgets. And I can do a summary of those changes for you as opposed to issuing a whole new booklet. Also, we had some, you know, open enrollment for health insurance for next year just concluded. I'm getting those changes, and so I'm making making some of those adjustments. So I'll kind of put those, I'll summarize those and then get those to you before the council, obviously, next week. Things like that, so you can just see.
Like by,
Hmm?
they're not big change, so I guess we can do it Friday night. The heat on you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
Well, you told us, so.
right.
I mean, we're not really making a motion on this, right? It's just a review, right?
Right, we'll be scheduling a finance committee meeting before council on Tuesday, and that's where we'll adopt the budget and the resolution setting the tax levy, and then we have the public hearing at the Tuesday's council meeting.
So you got a dry one because you're not getting the one. Anybody else got anything? Can I get a motion to adjourn? Anybody else? Alderman? Nothing? Motion to adjourn. Second that motion. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Adjourned at 5:46 PM.